ourselves as in a reciprocal relationship. That doesn't mean that somebody's going to give back money or time in the same way, but it's a notion of a kind of positionality of the work and where you actually put yourself in relationship to that, whether you see yourself as in a consistent relationship with people. Sometimes folks are in very oppressive situations and they can't give back, quote unquote, in the way that we could imagine. But there are other ways, maybe they're not ready right now, but maybe, 6 years down the line, they're going to be doing something that's going to be part of the relationship we've built with each other and the new sociality that we've built with each other. And that matters too. So I think the charity orientation is really about how you see yourself and how you treat other people, as much as whether those people are able at that moment to actually directly give back. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. There's a question about, what about people who, let's see here, people who are in a position where they cannot, what was it here? Yeah. How would you go about participating in mutual aid for those who may not necessarily be able to participate physically? Pandemic, disability, lack of personal transportation, household members, etc. I think this is a really important point for us to consider. And I might also say to everybody that the folks who taught us about mutual aid the most are the people who've been the most marginalized, the people who've had the least to give in multiple kinds of ways. We have learned so much about mutual aid from people who are disabled. Disabled people have taught us so much about how to be in community with each other, how to create care networks. If you read Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasinha's book, Care Work, that's all about the work that people who are disabled do. So I think we have to kind of expand our minds about what people can and cannot give and how that looks in the world. And I'm going to drop in the chat a resource that my friend Ijeris Dixon created. And Ijeris actually created this a project that looked at 26 ways to be in the struggle beyond the streets. They just updated it in June. And it's a wonderful tool of forcing us to actually rethink the ways that we can give and be supportive and be part of this work. So we have a lot to learn from disability justice and being creative about how exactly somebody's saying creativity is such an important value to hold for coming up with responses to issues. Absolutely. May not look the way we want or the way we think we want or what we think we need, but it absolutely is the case that anybody can give at any, it has a way to be able to be supportive. And so I would just put that out there, and I would just challenge all of us to think differently about what we mean by all of that stuff. I'm going to give a very short example of, many years ago, this is many, many years ago now, I was a child, and I wanted to go on a school trip. And part of it was to raise money to be able to go on this school trip. And what I ended up, my mother, I had said, I'm going to go and ask all our neighbors and friends to help me go on this trip. And my mom's like, okay, that's fine. And she said, but you cannot ask your great aunt for any support at all, because she's got a lot of things going on. She's struggling and she doesn't have any money. So don't ask her. And I went around, I asked everybody. And then a couple of weeks later, I saw my great aunt and she said, I hear that you are trying to go on this trip. And I'm wondering why you didn't ask me to help you, to donate, to support you. And I said, well, mom told me not, I was like, I don't know how old I was. I was like, mom told me not to ask you because you probably don't have any money to help me, right? Like I just said it like that. She taught me a valuable lesson because she just looked at me and she said, I want you to always ask me if you need help, because I really, really want to support you. And so if I can't, I'll say I can't, but I really, really want you to ask me. And it was a lesson to me at a very young age that we should not make assumptions about who can and cannot give ever. that we don't know what people's circumstances are. And more importantly, that to be asked and invited to support something makes people feel a part of your life, that they have something to contribute to you. And she wrote me she pulled out some money and she donated to my ability to go on that trip. I have never forgotten it. And I've never forgotten her. And she's been gone a long time. She's passed away. She was already pretty old when I was like 10 years old. So, you know, and so I think that it tells you something about what you've already decided people can and cannot do. You should always ask and invite people in. And if they say no, you shouldn't also take that personally. That is not something to take personally. You then just keep it moving. It means they said no this time, and you can come back to them in the future and ask for something else again. So again, a reminder to all of us about all of this stuff. Stop assuming crap and actually ask people questions and invite everybody to participate. You don't know what people have and don't have, or what people can and cannot give. Again, the people with the least are the ones always giving. The people who give the most to charity are people who are poor in terms of a percentage of their income. Rich people don't give the most money in terms of the percentage of their income. Please remind yourself of that. What are the practical ways we can avoid separating people into categories of worthy and unworthy in our mutual aid projects? I mean, I think the practical ways are to have political education that tells people why it is that you're doing this work in the first place, and keep hammering home to people that, you know, we are here to actually support people on a regular basis, and we are here to support ourselves in the process. So it's a political education matter, in my opinion, rather than anything else, and a constant reminder of like, we're not doing this for charity. We're doing this for all these other reasons. And what are those? Yeah. You mentioned that mutual aid is reciprocal in contrast to charity. What does this mean practically when certain individual? Okay, we already answered that question. So I'm going to do that. Hi again. There are so many projects to build and issues to address. What's the best way to determine what to prioritize? Where to start? Where to start in wanting to actively engage or even start a network? Okay, I'll answer that in the next go around. When doing mutual aid work, how do you pressure the state and PIC into offering material support while resisting co-optation reforms to make liberation a more distant horizon? I mean, I think that this is just something you work out amongst yourselves. It's an organizing challenge, right? So it's a matter of, you're going to be organizing around getting the resources that you want in order to address the things that you need. I mean, I've been doing mutual aid work for ages, since I was a teenager myself. And I see it as part of the larger organizing work that I'm doing on a daily basis to try to change the conditions that we live in order to be able to make the world more survivable for more people. And so I think that it's really, really important for us to be constantly thinking about that, but not just ourselves, but with other people. It's a collective kind of push around that. And I want to say something also about co-optation. This gets used quite a bit, and I think sometimes it's really overused. You know, the system does adapt. It does try to come in and do things that will be, you know, potentially to take in our messages and everything else. And the response to that for us is to keep working. I mean, I don't know what else to tell people often. I'm just like, yes, okay, so it's not actually true. People will say things like the state has co-opted restorative justice. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. It's taken up its own form of what the hell it's doing. We, if we believe in restorative justice, can keep doing what we're trying to do and expand and know more people, involve more people, grow our movements, right? Because there's always going to be, quote, backlash. We live in the perpetual era of backlash. Like, there's been backlash all along the way. There's co-optation all the time. It's important to be aware of that, but it's important not to be completely and utterly controlled by that, or so fearful and worried that we can't actually move in the ways that we need to be moving. How to facilitate mutual aid in a wealthy suburb? I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I would think that, you know, they have the most resources. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think, you know, often those spaces are charity focused rather than mutual aid focused. And maybe it's a question of finding out who in that wealthy suburb area is, you know, most marginalized, and building with those folks in a reciprocal way, showing up, doing what is being asked of you to do, not trying to take over, not trying to be all about power mongering, you know, just show up, be present, ask how you can help, and see if people have things for you to do. And I also think, you know, so often when we're doing work, people often don't, they think, you know, people have a lot of ideas. Like, you know, my mother used to always say, you know, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Like you know, sometimes you look at things and you're just like, oh, and then you try to shove everything into your, but you're actually full very quickly. And I'm thinking about that when it comes to um, organizing work. You know, the vast majority of organizing work is deeply, deeply boring, deeply, deeply tedious, filled with meetings after meetings after meetings, the labor that is unseen. Somebody, my friend Andy Smith says it all the time, somebody has to be willing to do the photocopies during the revolution. And too many people show up like, nah, I'm here for the present public thing, right? And yet that's not the work. And I'm going to say that people who organize with me will attest to this. If I'm doing something, I'm the first one there. And usually, even at my age, I'm the last one to leave the space because I'm usually cleaning up too. So if you're going to work on these kinds of things, you should not be asking people to do things you won't do yourself. That's number one. But you got to be present. You got to actually get your hands dirty. I don't ask any single person, and you can ask 100 million people who work with me. You will not hear them say that Miriam does not do what she asks other people to do. I always do. So there's no kind of, you know, people may look out from the outside in because they don't know the situation, and they'll be like, oh, you know, here's the deal. Like, you know, the quote, star people. You don't know anything if that's how you look at people. Most people that I see people publicly trashing are people I know for a fact are the first ones at every place and are the ones making the photocopies. I know for a fact that that's the case. And people call those people celebrity activists. Can you believe that crap? Can you believe that? I said that the other day. I think I was talking to my friend Paige about that years ago. You know, you may appear on a newspaper somewhere giving a talk, but usually those same people are back, and, you know, the vast majority of them are doing that meeting, are giving people the stuff, or picking up the garbage at the end of the meeting. Yeah, that's what we got to do. We have to do that. Okay. How do we protect mutual aid initiatives from state repression? There's so many great responses. Great organizations that do this kind of work around anti-repression work, and I'll see if I can find a resource for that. I know there are lots more questions, but I'm going to move to the last part of our time together, and then I will try to leave some more time to answer more questions about that. Okay. So, yes, so I did a short kind of mutual aid 101 several months ago. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had asked me to partner to do this call about mutual aid when people were first starting to activate about it. And so this was a graphic design designed by Becca, I think it was Becca Barad, who made this. And I just appreciated the part about how to build a mutual aid network. Very simply, kind of steps I provided for folks to go through, build a pod, so the first kind of where you start is just like, who could help me, and then connecting with those folks. Can you help me? Can you sign up in this way to join on this? We used pod, but I'm saying, like, I think that the Bay Area Transformative Justice pod is a good tool to use in building your mutual aid network to begin. And I'll put a link to some of that later in the Padlet as well. You want to connect with those folks. And sometimes you want to just reach out to one other person. right? Because I think part of the difficulty in starting anything is to find one more person who you can talk to on a regular basis, and not to do it just by yourself and alone. Okay. Just one other person doubles all your efforts. So it doesn't have to feel so overwhelming. You don't have to start with 10 people. You just need one. Identify their support zone, meaning where are you actually going to be doing this work of mutual aid? Is it your building? Is it the floor you're on at your college? Is it amongst your coworkers? Is it in your religious, community? Where is this going to be situated? Where is the space? You should start small, and you should stay small. I think having a mutual aid network with 5 to 20 people in it is more than enough. It is more than enough. You want to establish your communication channels. Try many. People are on Facebook. People are doing Facebook groups. People are doing Signal groups. People are doing all sorts of ways of people. I don't, I have to say that I'm not really that good in technology in general. I'm on one technology platform, basically Twitter, but I think that you can find all the different ways that people interact. People are making Slack channels. I don't know anything about Slack, but they do that, I hear. And then you want to get your conversation started with the people that you've recruited. What are the needs? What are your goals? What's your mission? What's your vision? How are you going to work on all the things that you want to work on together? And I want to say something about this part. If you already have a very strong view of what it is that you think you should do and what you want to be doing, please make sure that you tell people that. Don't pretend that you're, quote, open to feedback when really you're not. Don't lie to people. Don't lie to people. If you feel strongly about something, you should fight for that vision, right? Because what I think that ends up doing is it builds in some conflict at the very beginning, which is that you say, no, I'm really, really open to other people's ideas, but inside you're really not. And so you start off on the foot of where you basically already begun with a lie. And when people do give their feedback, you're like, no, I'm not really interested. I'm not listening to it. And people realize that. They know you didn't really want input when you said that you wanted input. So don't say you want input if you don't want input. Okay. The next thing that you want to do is then figure out how you're going to actually do the work. Are you cleaning? You offering a cleaning supply place? Are you offering childcare collective? Are you doing grocery and meal pickup? What are the actual goals of what it is that you're trying to do? Yeah. So this is a very simplified kind of way. There's a more detailed document that a woman named Carol Daniels made based on the call, that kind of gives more steps. And there were more steps in that call than the ones I'm just offering here. But I do think that there's a block for many people around starting something, because there's often that sense, and I saw that one of those things in a question, that there's just so much to choose from, right? How do I even begin? What do I do? And I really think you have to figure out what it is that you care about, right? What is it that you actually care about? Because that has to sustain you in the long run. That really does. It has to sustain you in the long run. When times are going to be hard, because they're going to be hard, when conflicts arise, because conflicts will arise, how exactly are you going to actually manage that? You're going to manage that because you're going to actually be saying to yourself, I care about this. I'm willing to put up with a lot of stuff because I care very deeply about how this is going to turn out, how this is working, right? So very, very important, very critical for everybody to be able to know, what is it that I care about? Narrow down, find another person, talk to that person. Do you care about this too? Maybe we can work together. What are your ideas? Where do we want to do this? Who do we need to bring to the table? How are we going to actually communicate with each other in this COVID era? What are we going to do about accessing the resources that we need in order to get started? Who else should we talk to? How can we find out what people in our neighborhood and communities actually want and need? Perhaps we should create some sort of online survey and put that onto our Facebook group and ask people to respond, right? Like there's so many ways to actually just move from an idea, but you have to be committed to knowing exactly what it is that you're trying to want to do. You can't just be like, I want to do everything. No, or I don't really know. If you don't really know, then you're not ready. You might be ready to start being part of somebody else's network. That's also okay and good. Yeah. So I want people to be thinking about that as you're jumping into this kind of work. I also am going to share in the chat a wonderful tool that my friend Laura McTighe created with for her students. She teaches in Florida at a university down there, and she did this great project with them around creating a mutual aid map using what if some of you were on the pod mapping session earlier with Centera, using that concept of a pod map and asking people to answer a series of questions for themselves to create a map of them and their people and kind of growing from there, right? What are some lists of things that you need? Now map your own people. Now move on to like creating some issues about what, you know, what care is it that you can do every day for the people in your life, the people in your home, right? So this might be a good tool for you to use as a way to actually develop and find out what you care about, find out who your people are, be able to kind of take those steps and go through it one by one by one. I know for some people it's very helpful and useful for you to have steps that you can go through, because sometimes it's hard on our own to just sit where we are and come up with the things that we think we need to do. So this is a very good tool for that. And we'll also include that in the Padlet that exists, where you can be able to find more of the information we've offered and put out there. So next slide, please. The resources. On my blog, there are many resources that I've put together around mutual aid, including webinars that people have done about mutual aid. Mutual Aid Relief, which is a great organization, has so many tools. I've included that there. Laura's map is on that site too. So if you get the bit.ly Mutual Aid July, you'll be able to access all those resources there. I put stuff from Dean's blog. Big Door Brigade is on there as well. So there's a lot of stuff for you to be able to access and focus on. So I want to close, next slide, with a reading of this poem. I'm a big person. I love poetry. I mean, I'm a huge fan of poems. And I really love this poem because I think it encapsulates so much of what we've talked about today. It's called Turning to One Another by Margaret Wheatley. There is no power greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what's possible, not what's wrong. Keep asking. Notice what you care about. Assume that many others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talk to. Be intrigued by the differences you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Invite everybody who cares to work on what's possible. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert about something. Know that creative solutions come from new connections. Remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. Real listening always brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change the work. Rely on human goodness. Stay together. So I really invite everybody to, yes, Carla, that's right. That's where all the resources are for the bit.ly. Thank you. So I want to kind of end here, and I will answer some of the questions that were in the Q&A. I know people have to go. It's like Friday. I wanted to be done by exactly 2 hours. So hopefully we're within that. And I want to just make sure that I answer some of the remaining questions. And so those of you who want to stay on and hear those questions, feel free. Those of you who need to go and meet the rest of your day and start your weekends. I don't know if we actually have weekends anymore, but every day feels like weirdly, in this kind of COVID land day. It's like every day feels so weirdly specific, or not specific, either one. So I'm just going to answer some of the questions you have that are here. What advice do you have for college students trying to get involved in starting mutual aid groups in the towns they go to school in, even if they may only be there for the duration of their education? My advice is the exact same. When you're at a college and at a space, that becomes your community, for good or bad, for better or for worse. So figure out how you can be supportive and helpful in your own community. And it's so incredibly important to find a place for yourself, to have the same values of not being charity, but of being interdependent and of being solidarity and of working with other people as opposed to working for them or on behalf of them, right? So working with others, even if they're not in your space. Can you speak to the relationship or difference between mutual aid and community service? Yeah, it's all the things that we talked about, right? The power relationships, the hierarchy not being there, making decisions in a consensus model. You're not providing services, you're not saving other people. So that's the difference. How can we make sure not to act as charities when it comes to making our work includes political education, i.e. if someone isn't where you are politically, how do you make sure you're not using your positioning to offer aid to coerce people into abolition, anarchism, or whatever? Well, I mean, I think, as I tell people all the time, not everybody has to be an abolitionist, a PAC abolitionist. And in fact, the vast majority of people I work with are not, because the vast majority of people in this country and in the world are not. So I don't think it's hard. Um, we're actually, if you're a PAC abolitionist, you're in the minority. So, coercing people seems like a really ridiculous way of continuing to have no building of power and keeping yourself marginalized. You have to meet people where they are. And what that means, though, and I think this is important because I think a lot of people mistake meeting people where they are with not challenging folks on very oppressive ideas. So it doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm not going to put up with people who are questioning the existence, my own existence, and also the existence of people I know and love and care about. So if you're oppressive and spewing oppressive forces, I'm not going to come at you the first day I meet you, most likely. But if we're going to remain in relationship, I'm absolutely going to address it. I'm absolutely going to address it, because otherwise we're not going to be able to work in integrity with each other. And I very much disagree with some of the ways. There's a great chart in restorative justice that shows, like, there's a part where people are kind of neglectful. This happens a lot in social justice spaces, where people are like, so and so has dealt with a lot in their life and they're really marginalized and and we're just gonna, like, no. Okay, you do no help to people if you do not actually challenge them on oppressive things. Because how the hell are we going to get free if you're just sitting around co-signing very oppressive behaviors? Now, please understand that is not, I'm not talking then about like monitoring and policing every single word out of people's mouths. There's a difference between the two things. Okay? It isn't that if somebody says the wrong word, uses the wrong pronoun for somebody. I also disagree with that. If somebody makes a mistake in speaking in some way, you call that person in. You don't humiliate them in public before everybody. If 7 years down the line, they're still doing the same thing, that's a different story. But you're going to, like, how would you want to be treated? One of the best things I ever heard an abolitionist say, a longtime abolitionist say, Ryan Conrad, was one of the ways that he became an abolitionist was to be like, okay, what if I lost my shit one day and did something horrific? how would I want to be treated? Would I want to be caged, humiliated, harmed, and hurt? Or would I want something else? And when you think about yourself, you take some empathy and you remove yourself from being an outside observer, and you really are just grounded in yourself and your experiences, you're going to think about how you want to be treated when you make, inevitably, when you make mistakes and you harm people, because each and every one of us makes mistakes daily. We're fallible, and all of us harm people. It's just by a matter of degree. So if you start acting that way and you start really embodying that, you have a very different way of interacting with people. And it's why I have zero, it doesn't bother me at all when people say things like, you know, there's a lot of people who have a lot of things to say about me. And I'm never upset about that unless it's people who know me and I'm in relationship with, and they point out to me that I've done something to harm them and to hurt them or whatever, then I pay attention to that very seriously. And I take accountability myself, because you can't hold other people accountable. You have to take accountability. And I try to make repair and shift and change. But a bunch of people who don't know a crap about me trying to say things, it has zero impact. I want people to think about that when we're talking about, quote, holding people accountable. I hear this all the time, particularly on the internet. I just find it hilarious, because you're not going to hold anybody accountable. People have to take accountability. They have to choose to be accountable. You can coerce people all you like. It usually doesn't work. So that's how that goes. How do we explain the necessity of mutual aid when people are convinced they can take care of themselves, privileged people and people with more resources? I mean, you know, you can't convince somebody who doesn't want to take actions that are about being interactive, interdependent with other people, to be interdependent with other people. The best you can do, you can't convince people of most things. The best way to act in the world is for you to act. For you to act, right? It's for you to be self-accountable. It's for you to model the behavior you want to be seeing in the world. People are attracted to people who they see are living in integrity in some way, and they want to do better because they want to be in integrity too, because they want to be in relationship with you. This is why I'm going to say again, one of the things that is never going to happen, we are not going to transform some of these toxic cultures that we're in until we take accountability ourselves for our own behavior, and until we insist that people who are in relationship with us also take accountability. That those folks, you have to have constant conversations with your people and your comrades. And your first response when you hear that somebody did something is not to immediately defend that person. Why? Because you don't know. Now, if you have had time to have conversations with people and you've gone through back and forth and you realize what the situation is, you have more information, yeah, by all means, defend your friends. But the automatic defense of our people, even if they're your own family members, is ridiculous. You shouldn't be automatically defending anybody except yourself, if you know what you did and did not do. Okay, what are your thoughts on the way anarchist ideology practice can inform our organizing and mutual aid? What, in your opinion, is uniquely valuable as an anarchist or anarcho-communist perspective rather than a different non-anarchist leftism? What are its drawbacks? Oh gosh, I can't answer that question. I can't get into a whole conversation about anarchy, etc. I'm not an anarchist, and I have a lot of respect for anarchists. I have a lot of anarchist friends. I'm probably more of a commune socialist, but yeah, I don't have much to say about that. Advice for starting mutual aid with someone currently incarcerated. I think you should definitely reach out to the folks who are putting out the new journal In the Belly. If you find them on social media, if you're on Twitter, they do really, really wonderful work around mutual aid with folks who are currently incarcerated. They can definitely support you in coming up with some answers there. There's also the IWW, IWalk committees that do really a lot of really great jailhouse lawyers project. A lot of those groups do terrific work with incarcerated people and do mutual aid with them on the inside. If you don't know any mutual aid activists in your community, what are the ways that you can find? You don't need to have mutual aid activists in your community. You can become a mutual aid activist in your community, and you can bring in your friends and become activists in your own community. You don't have to actually have like pre-existing activists in your spaces. So I hope that answers that. This may sound silly, but do you have any advice on how to navigate the social dynamics of organizations that already exist, on being a newcomer and joining communities? It's not a silly question. I think it's a good one. I think that we should be doing some work around, let me see here. Somebody else had asked for resources for navigating conflicts in general. There's a good website, which I'm going to pull up, that is the Conflict Transformation Fund, has a resource list. And I suggest that people take a look at that resource list for yourselves. And you can find some of the resources that they have over there that help you figure out, you know, organizational conflicts. Organizational conflicts are hard. They're going to happen. We're in community with each other. Yeah. How do you navigate an organizing space where there's no willingness for accountability, run by white anarchists and manarchists who don't openly share knowledge? Then if there's no willingness there, then you don't need to be there. You can move on. This goes back to my point about like, I honestly don't understand what people are doing most of the time right now. I feel I'm definitely ready for retirement. I've been ready for retirement. And I just like, some spaces are not yours. You know, like we don't have to make every space ours. If some space is like a place where you really don't feel, if you don't feel like welcome someplace, you don't have to stay there, right? You don't have to stay. You can move on. And you not having to stay also doesn't mean you need to burn that other place down, right? You can just move on. You can choose to move on. And sometimes we can also choose to move on without acrimony. And that, I think, comes from wisdom of the years, to be honest with you. Like we don't, and also, I also want to say something about what I feel is really toxic in so many ways, which is like in a moment where, like, you know, you're having an identity is not the basis of politics. It isn't. Your identity informs your politics, but it isn't in and of itself your politics. And I think we have to get to a point where we can actually figure out how to be ourselves, our full selves, but that not every space is going to embrace our full selves. And guess what? That's okay, y'all. That's okay. In what part of your life do you get everything you need from one place? We come to organizations now very often, and many of us come from, you know, if you come from a family where you didn't feel supported or you didn't feel loved, or you come from a community where you don't have that many friends, and you make that organization your everything. That organization can't be your everything, y'all. And it isn't your family. No matter how much language we use about these spaces being family, they are not. They are not. Stop doing that. It's too much pressure. Most spaces that we create are containers where we can do collective work together and then find what we need in other places. But they cannot be your everything. No place can. Some of you are partnered with people. Those people can't be your everything. I mean, you know, some of you are married to people. Those people shouldn't be your everything. That's what's going to lead to your divorce and your breakup. This is now Miriam, Dr. Phil, Miriam, who I hate Dr. Phil. But you know what I'm saying? I swear to God, like I see stuff and I'm constantly like, why are y'all like this? Why are y'all like this? Stop seeking everything from one space. It can't happen. And it frankly should not, because my God, how boring would that be? Find what you need where you are. Take what you can, leave the rest behind. And if the place is just abusive, that's totally different. But if the place just makes you uncomfortable, come on, y'all. Please. Discomfort is not abuse. Sometimes discomfort isn't even harmful. It's just discomfort. Anyway, on that point, there are a few other questions, but I want to shut down now. There's a wave that people are, there's one person asked this last question. They're putting it out again. How do you move away from the charity nonprofit model? I don't know the answer to that. Can it be achieved without losing access to significant resources that can be used to do good? How can we balance our knowledge of the fundamental injustice of charity as an industry with our desire to help as many people as possible? I don't know the answer to that. I think that you have to be in a position where you are trying to live up to the values that you set for your project, for yourself, and tries to actually, in that, how do you manifest that? And if something is counter to your values, you probably should move away from it. If something is just rubbing against your values, there may be a way for you to be working towards making that work. Every single thing we do has contradictions embedded in it, but every single system that exists has the possibility of it being destroyed by its own contradictions. Those are a fact. Yeah, those are a fact. So you're going to be struggling all the time. And if your life is really worried, if you're worried for most of your life about what other people are going to say and think about you, so I'm going to end with that. You are going to be a miserable human being because people don't know what the hell they're talking about for the most part because they don't know you. Okay? So you're going to be accused of any number of things, of being a sellout, of being this, of being that. And if you're not a sellout and you've tried your best and you have your values and you're trying to meet that, then you know what? Those people don't know you. So who the hell cares? God, live your life. It's hard enough. We got a lot of problems going on in the world. Stop caring so much about what jackasses who have nothing to say about you, who know nothing about you. What the hell do they care about you? You think I care? I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. And a lot of people have a lot of things to say about me, and I don't care. If they don't know me and we're not in relationship and we aren't in community and they are not comrades of mine, their opinions matter to me very little, almost not at all. Except sometimes when I hear something and I'm like, there's a grain of truth in that. Let me pursue that. Right? So I hope you all really kind of stay in the shoes of your reality and your truth. Make sure you try to live with some integrity, hold fast to some values, be flexible when you need to be, meet people where they are, and don't try to be all about changing everybody and telling people that you're going to hold them accountable. That's ridiculous. Keep it moving. Be accountable to yourself and make sure that other people in your lives are doing the same thing. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you. And yeah, if you're on Twitter, see you on the Twitters. And yeah, thank you for joining us, everybody. And thanks to our amazing interpreters. Billy and Crystal, thank you. Thank you to Caitlin for captioning. Thank you to Allison. Thank you to Ebony for tech. Hope for live streaming with Eve. Dylan,